You've tried to change before. Maybe you wanted to start exercising, so you committed to the gym 5 days a week. Maybe you wanted to eat healthier, so you overhauled your entire diet overnight. Maybe you wanted to meditate, read more, or develop any number of good habits. You started with excitement and determination. You told yourself this time would be different. You were motivated. You were ready. And then, within days or weeks, you failed. The gym membership went unused. The diet became too restrictive. The meditation app sat unopened. You blamed yourself. You thought you lacked discipline or willpower. You felt like a failure. But here's the truth that will change everything. You didn't fail because you're weak or undisciplined. You failed because your approach was fundamentally flawed. Welcome to Tiny Habits, where you'll discover why lasting change doesn't come from big dramatic transformations, but from behaviors so small they seem almost laughably insignificant. This isn't motivation. This isn't willpower. This is behavior science applied to real life, developed by Dr. B.J. Fogg after 20 years researching human behavior at Stanford University's Behavior Design Lab. Let me share the story that changed behavior science forever. B.J. Fogg wanted to develop a personal flossing habit. Most people would set a goal: floss all your teeth every night. B.J. did something different. He set a goal so tiny it seemed ridiculous. Floss one tooth. Just one. After he brushed his teeth at night, he would floss exactly one tooth. That's it. This seemed absurd. What good is flossing one tooth? But something remarkable happened. Because the behavior was so tiny, there was zero resistance. He never felt too tired or too busy to floss one tooth. It took 3 seconds. So he did it every single night. And after flossing that one tooth, he naturally wanted to floss the others. Within weeks, he was flossing all his teeth automatically, without force or willpower. This tiny habit succeeded where ambitious attempts had failed for years. Why? Because B.J. designed the behavior to work with human psychology instead of fighting against it. He made it so small that motivation wasn't required. He attached it to an existing routine. And he celebrated immediately after doing it, wiring the habit into his brain through positive emotion. This is the tiny habits method. It reverses everything you've been taught about change. Instead of relying on motivation that fluctuates daily, you design behaviors that work regardless of motivation. Instead of trying to change through willpower and discipline, you change through design and emotion. Instead of forcing transformation, you cultivate it like a gardener growing plants. Here's what makes tiny habits different from every other habit system. First, it's based on 20 years of peer-reviewed research, not anecdotes or opinions. B.J. Fogg literally wrote the textbook on behavior design. His behavior model is taught at Stanford and used by companies worldwide. This isn't self-help speculation. This is science. Second, Tiny Habits acknowledges that motivation is unreliable. Most approaches assume you'll stay motivated. Tiny Habits assumes you won't and designs behaviors that work anyway. You don't need motivation to floss one tooth or do 2 push-ups. The behavior is so tiny that even on your worst day, you can do it. Third, Tiny Habits uses celebration as the secret ingredient. This is revolutionary. Other methods focus on consistency and discipline. Tiny Habits focuses on emotion. When you feel good immediately after a behavior, your brain wires that behavior in automatically. Celebration, not repetition, creates habits. Fourth, Tiny Habits is infinitely flexible and personal. There's no one-size-fits-all prescription. You design behaviors that fit your life perfectly. You choose what to change. You decide how small to start. You customize everything to match your reality. In this audiobook, you'll learn the complete Tiny Habit system. You'll understand the Fogg behavior model, the 3 elements required for any behavior to happen. You'll discover why starting ridiculously small is the only strategy that actually works long-term. You'll learn how to use anchor moments to attach new habits to existing routines. You'll master celebration and the shine method that wires habits into your brain. You'll design your perfect tiny habits that fit your actual life. And you'll learn how to troubleshoot when things don't work and how to scale behaviors naturally over time. But before we dive into the method, understand this. Tiny habits requires a fundamental mindset shift. You must let go of the belief that big goals require big actions. You must accept that tiny actions, repeated consistently, create massive transformation. You must embrace starting so small it feels silly. You must trust the science even when it contradicts your instincts. Most people resist tiny habits at first. Their brain says, "This is too small to matter. Flossing one tooth won't make a difference. 2 push-ups won't get me fit. Reading 1 sentence won't make me knowledgeable." But this thinking misses the entire point. Tiny habits isn't about the behavior itself. It's about the system you're creating. It's about building the skill of behavior change. It's about proving to yourself that you can change, which creates identity shift and momentum. Think about it this way. Every habit you want to develop faces the same obstacle at the beginning: resistance. Resistance comes from the gap between your current state and the behavior you're attempting. If you're sedentary and you try to start exercising an hour daily, the gap is enormous. Resistance is massive. You'll fail. But if you're sedentary and you do 2 push-ups, the gap is tiny. Resistance is negligible. You'll succeed. Success creates positive emotion. Positive emotion wires the behavior. The behavior becomes automatic. Once it's automatic, you can grow it naturally. 2 push-ups become 5, then 10, then 20. But it all starts with making success inevitable by starting impossibly small. Here's the promise of tiny habits. You will change. Not through superhuman effort or discipline. Through smart design. You will develop habits you failed at for years. Not because you suddenly became more motivated. Because you stopped relying on motivation. You will transform your behavior, your identity, and your life. Not through force. Through cultivation. The method works. Thousands of people have used tiny habits to transform their lives. They've lost weight, gotten fit, become more productive, improved relationships, reduced stress, and achieved goals that seemed impossible. Not through dramatic change. Through behaviors so tiny they seemed insignificant. 1 tooth. 2 push-ups. 2 breaths. 1 sentence. These tiny seeds grew into mighty oaks. Your transformation begins now. Not tomorrow when you feel more ready. Not next week when conditions are better. No. Because the beautiful truth about tiny habits is you're always ready. You don't need motivation. You don't need discipline. You just need to be willing to start ridiculously small, celebrate your wins, and trust the process. Let's begin. One. The Fogg behavior model. The formula for any behavior. Every behavior you perform happens because 3 elements converge at the same moment. Every single one. Whether it's checking your phone, eating a snack, going for a run, or brushing your teeth. Every behavior follows the same formula. Dr. B.J. Fogg spent decades studying human behavior and distilled his findings into the elegantly simple Fogg behavior model. B equals map. Behavior happens when motivation, ability, and prompt converge at the same moment. Let's break this down because understanding this model is the foundation for everything else. B stands for behavior. Any action you want to happen. M stands for motivation. Your desire to do the behavior. A stands for ability. Your capacity to do the behavior. P stands for prompt. The cue that tells you to do the behavior now. When all 3 elements are present simultaneously at sufficient levels, behavior happens. When any element is missing or insufficient, behavior doesn't happen. This seems simple, but it's revolutionary. Most people trying to change behavior focus almost entirely on motivation. They try to pump themselves up, find their why, get inspired. But motivation is just one of 3 required elements. And critically, it's the least reliable element. Motivation fluctuates constantly based on sleep, stress, mood, and 1,000 other factors. Building your change strategy on motivation is building on sand. Here's what the behavior model reveals. You have 3 paths to making a behavior happen. You can increase motivation, increase ability by making the behavior easier, or strengthen the prompt. Traditional approaches rely heavily on the first path. Increase motivation. Tiny Habits focuses primarily on the second path. Increase ability by making behaviors so easy that motivation becomes irrelevant. Let's explore each element in detail. Motivation is your desire to do something. It exists on a spectrum from desperately want to do it, to neutral, to desperately don't want to do it. Your motivation for any behavior waves constantly. Some days you feel motivated to exercise. Other days you don't. Some moments you want to eat healthy. Other moments you crave junk food. Motivation is like the weather. It changes constantly and you can't control it reliably. Here's the critical insight about motivation. You can't depend on it for habit formation. Motivation gets you started sometimes, but it won't sustain you. If your system requires high motivation every day, you'll fail when motivation inevitably drops. This is why New Year's resolutions fail by February. People rely on January's motivation spike to sustain behaviors that require ongoing high motivation. When motivation returns to baseline in February, the behaviors stop. Tiny Habits doesn't fight this reality. It accepts it and designs around it. Instead of trying to maintain high motivation, you make behaviors so easy that even low motivation is sufficient. When you only need to floss 1 tooth, you don't need to feel motivated. You just do it because it's absurdly easy. Now let's discuss ability. Ability is how easy or hard a behavior is for you to do. Notice, for you specifically, ability is personal. What's easy for one person might be hard for another. Ability depends on 5 factors: time required, money required, physical effort, mental effort, and whether the behavior fits your routine. Here's the powerful truth. You have tremendous control over ability. You can make any behavior easier or harder by adjusting these 5 factors. Can't find time to exercise an hour? Make it easier. Exercise 2 minutes. Can't afford gym membership? Make it easier. Do bodyweight exercises at home. Behavior requires too much physical effort? Make it easier. Do a smaller version. Behavior requires too much thinking. Make it easier. Simplify it. This is where Tiny Habits gets its power. By making behaviors ridiculously small, you maximize ability. Floss 1 tooth takes 3 seconds, costs nothing, requires minimal physical and mental effort, and fits easily into your existing routine. The ability is so high that motivation becomes almost irrelevant. You can do it on your worst day. The relationship between motivation and ability is inverse. When motivation is high, you can do hard things. When motivation is low, you can only do easy things. Picture a graph. Motivation on the vertical axis, ability on the horizontal axis. There's a curve running from high motivation, low ability to low motivation, high ability. Behaviors above this curve happen. Behaviors below don't. Most people try to push behaviors into the happen zone by increasing motivation, moving up the vertical axis. This works temporarily but fails when motivation drops. Tiny Habits moves behaviors into the happen zone by increasing ability, moving right on the horizontal axis. This works permanently because the behavior is so easy it happens regardless of motivation. The third element is prompt. A prompt is anything that cues you to do the behavior. It can be external, an alarm, a notification, another person asking you to do something, or internal, a feeling, a thought, a location. Without a prompt, behavior doesn't happen, even if you're motivated and able. You might be motivated to call your friend and it's easy to do, but if nothing prompts you, you won't do it. Prompts must be effective, meaning they have to happen when you're both motivated and able enough. An alarm reminding you to exercise at 3 a.m. isn't effective because your ability is low then. You're asleep. The prompt happens at the wrong time. In Tiny Habits, we use existing routines as prompts. These are behaviors you already do consistently. After I brush my teeth is a perfect prompt because it happens daily at a time when you're able to floss one tooth. Here's how the three elements work together. Let's say you want to develop a meditation habit. Traditional approach. Set a big goal to meditate 30 minutes daily. Get motivated by reading about benefits. Then try to force yourself to do it. What happens? Day 1. Motivation is high. You meditate 30 minutes. Day 2. Motivation is still decent. You meditate 20 minutes. Day 3. You're busy and tired. Motivation drops. 30 minutes feels hard. You skip it. Day 4. You feel guilty. You skip again. The habit fails. Tiny Habits approach. Start with 2 breaths. After you sit down at your desk in the morning, you take 2 deep breaths. That's it. Day 1. Motivation doesn't matter because 2 breaths is absurdly easy. You do it. Day 2, same. Day 3, you're busy and tired, but 2 breaths takes 5 seconds. You do it. Day 4, 5, 10, 30. You do it every time because it's so easy that motivation is irrelevant. After a week of 2 breaths, something shifts. The behavior is becoming automatic. You start naturally wanting to take a few more breaths. The tiny habit is growing organically. Within a month, you're meditating 5 minutes daily without force. Within 3 months, 10 minutes. The same goal that failed with the motivation approach succeeds with the ability approach. Here's the behavior design framework. To create a new habit, make the behavior so easy that motivation is unnecessary. Attach it to an existing routine that serves as the prompt, and celebrate immediately to create positive emotion. This formula makes habit formation reliable instead of dependent on willpower. Understanding the behavior model changes everything. When a behavior isn't happening, you now have a diagnostic tool. Which element is missing? Is motivation too low? Make the behavior easier to compensate. Is ability too low? Simplify the behavior or increase skills. Is the prompt missing or mistimed? Create a better prompt. Most importantly, the behavior model reveals why traditional advice fails. Just do it assumes motivation. But motivation fluctuates. Make it a habit doesn't explain how. The behavior model explains exactly how. Ensure all 3 elements converge. When they do, behavior is inevitable. When they don't, behavior is impossible. As we close this chapter, internalize this model. B equals map. Behavior happens when motivation, ability, and prompt converge at the same moment. This is the foundation. Everything else in Tiny Habits builds on this. And the core strategy is clear. Maximize ability by starting tiny, use existing routines as prompts, and let motivation take care of itself. Now let's explore exactly how to start ridiculously small. Chapter 2. Start ridiculously small. The Tiny Habits method. The single most important principle in Tiny Habits is this. Start ridiculously small. Not small. Not manageable. Ridiculously small. So small it seems laughably insignificant. So small your brain can't generate resistance. So small that even on your absolute worst day, you can do it. This is counterintuitive. Everything in our culture tells us that big goals require big actions. We're taught to aim high, push hard, and give maximum effort. Tiny Habits flips this completely. Here's why starting ridiculously small works when ambitious starts fail. Resistance. Every new behavior faces resistance. Resistance is the gap between your current state and the behavior. When you're sedentary and you try to start exercising an hour daily, resistance is enormous. Your brain generates 1,000 reasons not to do it. I'm tired, I don't have time, I'll start tomorrow, this is too hard. Resistance wins. You fail. But when you're sedentary and you commit to 2 push-ups, resistance evaporates. Your brain can't argue against 2 push-ups. You obviously have time. It's obviously not too hard. There's nothing to resist. You do the 2 push-ups. Success. This success is crucial. Success creates positive emotion. Positive emotion creates motivation to continue. Continued success builds identity. You become someone who exercises. That identity shift then makes bigger behaviors easier because they align with who you are. But it all starts with success, and success comes from making the behavior so small that failure is impossible. Let me share specific examples of ridiculously small. Want to develop a reading habit? Don't commit to reading 30 minutes daily. Read 1 sentence. Want to get fit? Don't commit to an hour at the gym. Do 2 push-ups. Want to meditate? Don't commit to 20 minutes. Take 2 breaths. Want to drink more water? Don't commit to 8 glasses. Drink 1 sip. Want to practice gratitude? Don't write 3 pages. Write 1 word. Your brain immediately objects. This is too small to matter. 1 sentence won't make me well read. 2 push-ups won't get me fit. But your brain is thinking about the behavior itself, not the system you're creating. The behavior is the seed. The system is the garden. You're not trying to get fit from 2 push-ups. You're creating the habit of exercising. Once that habit is automatic, it will naturally grow. Here's the specific method for determining how small to start. Take the behavior you want to develop. Shrink it to a version that takes less than 30 seconds and requires minimal effort. Then shrink it again and again until you reach a version so small that you laugh. That's your starting point. If it doesn't make you laugh at how small it is, it's not small enough. Why laughter? Because laughter indicates your brain can't generate resistance. When something is so small it's funny, resistance has nowhere to attach. There's nothing to argue against. This emotional response of, "This is ridiculously easy," is exactly what you want. B.J. Fogg calls this finding your minimum viable habit, the smallest version of the behavior that still counts. For flossing, it's 1 tooth. For push-ups, it's 2. For meditation, it's 2 breaths. For reading, it's 1 sentence. Find your minimum viable version for whatever habit you want to develop. Now let's address the objection everyone has. What if I don't scale up? What if I just floss 1 tooth forever and never develop full flossing? Here's the beautiful truth. This almost never happens. Once you're doing the tiny version consistently, natural growth occurs. After flossing 1 tooth, you naturally want to floss the others because the floss is already in your hand. After 2 push-ups, you naturally do a few more because you're already down on the floor. The tiny habit creates momentum and opens the door. Once the door is open, natural expansion happens. But you have to open the door first. And ambitious starts keep the door closed because resistance prevents you from starting at all. Tiny starts open the door every time. Here's the critical mindset. Give yourself permission to stop at the tiny version. Tell yourself, I only have to floss 1 tooth. I can stop after 2 push-ups. This permission is essential. It eliminates the pressure and obligation that create resistance. When you know you can stop after the tiny version, you actually do it. And once you do it, you usually do more. But the permission to stop is what gets you to start. Let me share a powerful story. Linda wanted to start exercising but had failed at every gym membership and exercise program. She felt like a failure. BJ coached her to start with one tiny habit. After she got out of bed in the morning, she would put on her exercise shoes. That's it. Not exercise. Just put on shoes. This seemed too simple to Linda. How would putting on shoes change anything? But she tried it. Day 1, she got out of bed and put on her exercise shoes. Then she took them off and went about her day. Day 2, same thing. Day 3, after putting on her shoes, she thought, well, I have shoes on, might as well walk to the mailbox. She did. Day 4, she walked around the block. Within 2 weeks, Linda was walking 30 minutes every morning. Within a month, she added jogging intervals. Within 3 months, she'd lost weight and completely transformed her relationship with exercise. All because she started with the ridiculously small behavior of just putting on shoes. The tiny habit was the seed that grew into transformation. This is how tiny habits works. You're not trying to force the full behavior. You're planting a seed and nurturing it. The seed is tiny. The tree it grows into is mighty. But you have to plant the seed first. And seeds are small. Here's the practical framework for starting ridiculously small. Step 1. Identify the behavior you want to develop. Be specific. Not exercise, but do push-ups or go for walks. Step 2. Find the tiniest version that still counts. If it's push-ups, maybe it's 2 push-ups. If it's walking, maybe it's walking to the door. Step 3. Test if it's small enough. Can you do this on your worst day? If the answer isn't an enthusiastic yes, make it smaller. Step 4. Give yourself full permission to stop at the tiny version. You don't have to do more. The tiny version counts completely. This permission is crucial. Step 5. Celebrate immediately after doing the tiny version. We'll explore celebration deeply in a later chapter, but know that celebration is what wires the habit in. Now let's discuss the skill you're actually building. Tiny habits isn't just about developing specific behaviors. It's about building your change-making skills. Every time you successfully do a tiny habit, you're proving to yourself that you can change. You're building confidence. You're developing the skill of behavior design. You're learning what works for you. These metaskills compound just like the behaviors themselves. You get better at designing behaviors that fit your life. You get better at identifying effective prompts. You get better at celebrating. These skills then make future changes easier. This is why people who master tiny habits often create dozens of positive behaviors. They've built the skill of change itself. As we close this chapter, commit to starting ridiculously small. Whatever habit you want to develop, find a version so tiny it makes you laugh. Trust that this tiny seed will grow. Give yourself permission to stop at the tiny version. And celebrate when you do it. Tiny isn't weak. Tiny is smart. Tiny works. Now let's explore how to attach these tiny habits to your existing life through anchor moments. Chapter 3. Anchor moments. Attaching new habits to existing routines. You already have dozens of automatic behaviors in your life. You brush your teeth without thinking. You make coffee the same way every morning. You check your phone when you wake up. These existing routines are incredibly valuable because they happen consistently without requiring motivation or decision-making. In tiny habits, we use these existing routines as anchors for new habits. An anchor is something you already do consistently that can serve as the prompt for your new tiny habit. The formula is simple. After I existing routine, I will tiny habit. After I pour my morning coffee, I will drink 1 glass of water. After I sit down at my desk, I will take 2 deep breaths. After I brush my teeth, I will floss 1 tooth. The existing routine is the anchor. The tiny habit attaches to it. Why is this so powerful? Because you're not trying to create a prompt from nothing. Creating new prompts is hard. Alarms and reminders often fail because we ignore them or forget to set them. But existing routines happen automatically, which makes them perfect prompts. They're reliable, they happen at the right time and place, and they require no effort to maintain. Let's explore how to choose effective anchors. The best anchors are behaviors you do consistently every single day, ideally at the same time and place. Brushing teeth is a perfect anchor because it happens twice daily at predictable times in a specific location. Making coffee is perfect for morning routines. Sitting down at your desk works for work-related habits. Getting into bed works for evening habits. Here's the specific criteria for good anchors. First, frequency. The anchor should happen as often as you want the new habit to happen. If you want a daily habit, the anchor should be daily. If you want a twice-daily habit, find an anchor that happens twice daily. Second, consistency. The anchor should happen reliably. Activities that sometimes happen and sometimes don't make poor anchors. Third, location. The anchor should happen in the location where you can immediately do the new behavior. If your tiny habit is exercise-related, an anchor that happens in your bedroom works. An anchor that happens in your car doesn't. Fourth, it must be specific. After I wake up is too vague. After I turn off my alarm is specific. Now let's discuss the sequence. The tiny habit should happen immediately after the anchor. Not later in the morning. Not when you remember. Immediately. This creates a tight connection between anchor and behavior. After I pour my coffee, I immediately drink 1 glass of water. The water is right there by the coffee maker. The sequence is seamless. This immediacy is crucial for 2 reasons. First, it makes the prompt more effective. Immediate prompts work better than delayed ones. Second, it helps your brain create the association. When the tiny habit consistently follows the anchor with no delay, your brain starts linking them automatically. Eventually, the anchor itself triggers the desire to do the tiny habit. Let me share how to design your first anchor moment. Step 1. Choose one tiny habit you want to develop. Let's say it's doing 2 push-ups. Step 2. Identify existing routines in your day. List out 5 to 10 things you do every single day consistently. Maybe you brush teeth, make coffee, eat lunch, sit at your desk, drive home, eat dinner, watch TV, get in bed. Step 3. Match the tiny habit to the best anchor. Which existing routine happens at a time and place where you could immediately do 2 push-ups? Maybe after you get out of bed works. You're already standing up. You're in a location where you can do push-ups. The timing is right because you're alert. Step 4. Create your recipe. After I specific anchor, I will tiny habit. After I get out of bed, I will do 2 push-ups. This is your tiny habit recipe. It's precise, actionable, and designed to work with your life rather than requiring you to change your life. Step 5. Test it. Tomorrow morning, when you get out of bed, immediately do 2 push-ups. Notice how it feels. Is the sequence natural? Can you do it easily? If yes, you found a good anchor. If no, adjust. Maybe the anchor needs to be different, or the habit needs to be smaller. Here's an advanced technique: anchor stacking. Once you have one tiny habit anchored successfully, you can add another tiny habit to the same anchor or create a chain. After I brush my teeth, I will floss 1 tooth. After I floss 1 tooth, I will put lotion on my hands. After I put lotion on my hands, I will smile at myself in the mirror. This creates a sequence of tiny habits, each anchored to the previous one. Anchor stacking allows you to develop multiple habits efficiently. But be careful not to make the chain too long at first. Start with 1 or 2 tiny habits per anchor. As they become automatic, you can add more. The goal is success, not overwhelm. Now let's discuss troubleshooting when anchors don't work. Sometimes you'll choose an anchor and the habit doesn't stick. Here's how to diagnose the problem. Question 1. Is the anchor happening consistently? If your anchor is, after I exercise, but you only exercise sporadically, the anchor isn't reliable. Choose a different anchor that happens every day. Question 2. Is the sequence natural? If you anchor drinking water to brushing teeth, but your toothbrush is in the bathroom and your water is in the kitchen, the sequence isn't seamless. You have to walk to another room. That friction might be enough to break the chain. Adjust so the sequence is frictionless. Question 3. Are you doing the anchor at a time when you're able to do the tiny habit? If you anchor meditation to getting in bed, but you're exhausted when you get in bed, your ability is low. You might be too tired to even do 2 breaths. Anchor to an earlier moment when ability is higher. Question 4. Is the tiny habit truly tiny? If you anchored to brushing teeth but your tiny habit is flossing all your teeth thoroughly, it's not tiny enough. The friction might prevent you from doing it. Make it smaller. 1 tooth. Let me share a powerful example of anchor moment success. Maria wanted to develop a gratitude practice but had failed with journal prompts that required writing paragraphs. Using tiny habits, she created this recipe. After I set my phone alarm in the morning, I will say one thing I'm grateful for. That's it. One thing, spoken aloud, right after setting her alarm. This anchor was perfect because she set her alarm every single night. The location was her bedroom, where she could easily speak aloud. The timing worked because she was still awake and able. The tiny habit was ridiculously small. Just say one word or phrase. Maria did this successfully for a week. After setting her alarm, she'd say, "My family," or "my health," or "this bed." Just one thing. But something shifted. The practice felt good. She started naturally thinking of more things. The one thing became 2, then 3. Within a month, she was lying in bed for a few minutes actively appreciating multiple aspects of her life. The tiny habit anchored to a perfect moment grew into a meaningful practice. This is the power of anchor moments. They make new habits frictionless by piggybacking on existing automatic behaviors. They remove the need for reminders or motivation. They work with your life exactly as it is. And when combined with tiny behaviors, they make change inevitable. As we close this chapter, design your first anchor moment. Choose a tiny habit. Identify a perfect anchor. Create your recipe. Test it tomorrow. After I anchor, I will tiny habit. Then do it. And when you do, celebrate. Which brings us to the revolutionary insight that makes tiny habits unique. Celebration wires habits into your brain faster than repetition. Let's explore the power of celebration. Chapter 4. The Power of Celebration and Shine. Wiring habits through emotion. Here's the most counterintuitive and powerful insight in tiny habits. Celebration, not repetition, is what wires habits into your brain. Most people believe habits form through repetition alone. Do something enough times and it becomes automatic. This is partially true but incomplete. Repetition helps, but positive emotion is what actually creates the neural pathways that make behaviors automatic. This is revolutionary because it means you can accelerate habit formation dramatically by celebrating immediately after doing the behavior. And celebration doesn't mean throwing a party. It means creating a brief moment of positive feeling right after the tiny habit. B.J. Fogg calls this shine. It's the feeling of success, the spark of pride, the glow of accomplishment. And it's what transforms tiny behaviors into automatic habits. Let's explore the neuroscience. Your brain learns through emotion. When you do something and feel good immediately afterward, your brain releases dopamine and other neurochemicals that strengthen the neural pathway associated with that behavior. Your brain thinks, "This behavior creates good feelings. Do it again." The emotion is the signal that tells your brain this behavior is valuable and worth automating. Conversely, when you do something and feel bad or neutral, your brain doesn't get the signal to reinforce the behavior. You might do it through willpower, but you're not wiring it in. This is why forced behaviors that feel like obligations don't become automatic. There's no positive emotion. Without positive emotion, there's no reinforcement. Here's where tiny habits diverges from every other habit system. Most systems tell you to be disciplined and consistent. Just do the behavior every day and eventually it becomes habit. Tiny habit says, do the behavior and immediately feel good about it. The feeling is more important than the frequency. 1 week of doing a tiny habit with celebration wires it in faster than a month of doing it without celebration. This explains why some habits form instantly while others never stick despite months of effort. Habits with built-in positive emotion, like checking social media or eating dessert, wire in immediately because the behavior itself creates good feelings. Habits without built-in positive emotion, like flossing or exercise, require you to create the positive emotion deliberately through celebration. Now let's discuss how to celebrate effectively. The celebration must be immediate. Right after you complete the tiny habit, before you move to the next thing, create a moment of positive feeling. It can be as simple as saying, "Good job" to yourself, doing a fist pump, smiling, or thinking, "I'm awesome." The specific celebration doesn't matter. What matters is the feeling. B.J. Fogg has identified dozens of celebration types that people use successfully. Physical celebrations: fist pump, jumping jack, victory gesture, clapping. Verbal celebrations: yes, nailed it, I'm amazing, boom. Mental celebrations: imagining applause, visualizing success, feeling proud. The key is finding celebrations that genuinely create positive emotion for you personally. Here's how to find your effective celebrations. Experiment with different types and pay attention to which ones create genuine positive feeling. Some people feel silly saying "yes" out loud but feel great doing a fist pump. Others feel authentic celebrating verbally but awkward with physical gestures. What works is personal. Your celebration must feel real to you. Let me share the SHINE method specifically. After you do your tiny habit, take 2 to 3 seconds to feel the positive emotion. Don't rush past it. Actually feel it. Let yourself feel proud that you flossed 1 tooth. Let yourself feel accomplished that you did 2 push-ups. These feelings might seem disproportionate to the tiny behavior. That's fine. Let yourself feel them anyway. The feeling is what wires the habit. If you floss 1 tooth but don't feel good about it, you're missing the crucial element. If you floss 1 tooth and immediately feel proud, your brain is wiring that behavior as valuable. After a week of this, your brain will start wanting to floss because it associates flossing with positive feeling. Here's a specific example. You've created the tiny habit: after I brush my teeth, I will floss 1 tooth. You brush your teeth, then floss 1 tooth. Immediately after, before walking away from the sink, you do your celebration. Maybe you look in the mirror, smile, and say, "Got it done," while making a fist pump. You let yourself feel good for 2 seconds. Then you continue your night. That 2-second celebration is wiring the habit faster than anything else you could do. More than perfect consistency. More than increasing to all your teeth. The celebration is the secret ingredient. Do this for a week and the habit starts becoming automatic. After 2 weeks, you feel weird if you don't floss because your brain expects the good feeling that follows. Now let's address the objection everyone has. This feels fake or manipulative. I'm celebrating flossing 1 tooth. That's ridiculous. I didn't accomplish anything significant. Why would I celebrate? Here's the answer. You're not celebrating the tooth. You're celebrating that you're becoming the kind of person who flosses. You're celebrating that you kept a commitment to yourself. You're celebrating that you're changing. These are worth celebrating. Moreover, the feeling doesn't have to be proportionate to the behavior's significance. The feeling just has to be positive. Even a tiny positive feeling creates the dopamine response that wires the habit. You're not trying to feel like you won the Olympics. You're just trying to feel a little spark of good. Let me share how celebration transformed habits for thousands of people. James wanted to meditate but had failed for years. He tried the tiny habits approach. After I sit down at my desk in the morning, I will take 2 breaths. But initially, he did the 2 breaths without celebration. He'd take the breaths, then immediately start working. After 2 weeks, the habit wasn't sticking. He still had to remind himself. Then James learned about celebration. He started celebrating immediately after the 2 breaths. He'd take the breaths, then put his hand on his heart and say thank you to himself while smiling. This felt corny at first, but he did it anyway. Within 3 days, something shifted. He started wanting to do the 2 breaths because he knew the good feeling was coming. Within 2 weeks, the habit was completely automatic. The celebration made the difference. Here's the advanced technique. Vary your celebrations to prevent adaptation. If you use the exact same celebration every time, your brain might habituate and the positive feeling might diminish. Mix it up. Sometimes do a fist pump. Sometimes say something different. Sometimes just smile. The variety keeps the positive emotion fresh. Also, match celebration intensity to your personality and mood. Some people naturally celebrate enthusiastically. Others are more reserved. Both work. The only requirement is that the celebration creates genuine positive feeling for you. Don't force yourself to jump around if that feels inauthentic. Find celebrations that match who you are. Now let's discuss celebration mistakes. Mistake 1. Skipping celebration because you're in a hurry. This defeats the purpose. The 2 seconds of celebration are more important than the behavior itself. Always celebrate. Mistake 2. Celebrating later instead of immediately. If you do the tiny habit, then plan to feel good about it later, you've missed the window. The brain needs the emotion to follow the behavior immediately to create the association. Mistake 3. Combining celebration with reward. After I exercise, I'll eat ice cream as celebration. This isn't celebration. This is reward, which is different. Celebration is the emotion you feel, not something you give yourself. Rewards can be useful, but they're not the same as celebration. The SHINE method is about feeling good, not about treating yourself to something. Mistake 4. Being cynical or sarcastic in your celebration. Oh wow, I flossed 1 tooth, I'm such a hero. This sarcasm creates negative emotion, not positive. The brain doesn't wire the habit. Your celebration must be genuine, even if the behavior is tiny. If you can't genuinely feel good about it, your celebration needs to be different. Here's why celebration is more powerful than you realize. It's training your brain to associate the behavior with positive emotion. Every time you do this, you're strengthening that neural pathway. After enough repetitions with positive emotion, the behavior becomes automatic because your brain wants the good feeling. This is dramatically faster than repetition without emotion. Research suggests that celebration can reduce the time needed for habit formation from months to weeks. Some habits become automatic in days when celebrated effectively. The emotion is a catalyst that accelerates the process exponentially. As we close this chapter, commit to celebrating every tiny habit. Don't skip this. It's the secret ingredient that makes tiny habits work faster and more reliably than any other method. Find celebrations that create genuine positive feeling for you. Do them immediately after the behavior. Let yourself feel good even for tiny wins. Celebration isn't optional. It's essential. Now let's explore how to design your complete set of tiny habits. Chapter 5. Designing your perfect tiny habits. Customization and recipes. Tiny habits isn't a rigid program with prescribed behaviors. It's a flexible framework you customize to fit your actual life and goals. This chapter will guide you through designing your perfect tiny habits using the Tiny Habits recipe format and the principles we've learned. The Tiny Habits recipe has 3 components: the anchor, the tiny behavior, and the celebration. The format is, after I anchor, I will tiny behavior, and I will celebrate by celebration. This recipe is your blueprint. It's specific, actionable, and designed for success. Let's walk through the complete design process. Step 1. Identify what you want to change. Be specific. Don't say, be healthier. Say, exercise more, or eat more vegetables, or drink more water. Specific goals lead to specific behaviors. Make a list of 3 to 5 areas where you want to create change. Step 2. For each area, brainstorm tiny versions of behaviors that would move you in that direction. If your goal is exercise more, tiny versions might be: do 2 push-ups, do 1 squat, walk to the door, put on exercise shoes, stretch 1 muscle. Generate at least 5 tiny options for each goal area. Step 3. Identify your anchors. List your existing daily routines. When do you wake up? What's your morning sequence? What happens at work? What's your evening routine? Map out your day looking for consistent behaviors that happen every day. These are your potential anchors. Step 4. Match tiny behaviors to appropriate anchors. This is where design skill matters. The best matches are when the anchor happens at a time and place where you can immediately do the tiny behavior. After I pour my coffee might work for drinking water because both happen in the kitchen. It doesn't work for exercise because you can't do push-ups while making coffee. Consider context and sequence. Does the anchor happen when you're able to do the behavior? Is the behavior natural to do right after the anchor? Is everything you need available at that moment? Good matching creates frictionless sequences that work automatically. Step 5. Start with just 3 tiny habits. Don't try to change everything at once. 3 is manageable and allows you to master the method. Choose 3 different areas if possible, so you're creating broad change. Or choose 3 habits in the same area if that's your priority. Either works. Step 6. Write out your complete recipes. After I specific anchor, I will specific tiny behavior, and I will celebrate by specific celebration. Make each recipe as precise as possible. Vague recipes don't work. Precise recipes succeed. Let me share example recipes across different goal areas. For physical health, after I get out of bed, I will do 2 push-ups, and I will celebrate by saying, I'm strong. For mental health, after I sit at my desk, I will take 2 deep breaths, and I will celebrate by smiling. For relationships, after I see my partner, I will say one thing I appreciate, and I will celebrate by feeling warm. For productivity, after I open my laptop, I will write 1 sentence, and I will celebrate by doing a fist pump. For learning, after I eat lunch, I will read 1 sentence of my book, and I will celebrate by thinking, I'm learning. For gratitude, after I turn off my alarm, I will say one thing I'm grateful for, and I will celebrate by putting my hand on my heart. Notice the patterns. Each recipe is specific, tiny, anchored to existing routine, and includes celebration. This specificity is crucial. I will exercise more isn't actionable. After I get out of bed, I will do 2 push-ups is actionable. Now let's discuss the concept B.J. Fogg calls swarm of behaviors. This is the strategy of creating multiple tiny habits simultaneously that all move you toward the same goal. Instead of one big behavior, you create a swarm of tiny ones. For weight loss, instead of committing to exercise an hour daily, you might create 10 tiny habits. Do 2 squats after bathroom visits, take stairs instead of elevator, park far from entrance, drink water before meals, put fork down between bites, and so on. Each tiny habit is easy and low friction, but the cumulative effect of all of them is significant. The swarm creates change from multiple angles simultaneously, and because each behavior is tiny, you can maintain all of them without burning out. Here's how to design a swarm. Choose one major goal. Brainstorm 20 to 30 tiny behaviors that would contribute to that goal. You won't do all of them, but generate options. Then select 5 to 7 that fit your life best. Design recipes for each. Implement them all. The swarm creates momentum and redundancy. If one habit struggles, the others still progress. Let me share advanced design principles. Principle 1. Make it fit your life, not someone else's ideal. If you're not a morning person, don't anchor habits to waking up early. If you hate gyms, don't design exercise habits around gym visits. Design for your actual life, preferences, and constraints. Principle 2. Leverage your existing successes. Notice behaviors you already do consistently and easily. Can you anchor new habits to those? Can you modify those slightly to create new benefits? Build on what's working rather than trying to fix what's broken. Principle 3. Account for variation. Some days you'll be home. Some days traveling. Some days you'll follow your normal routine. Some days won't be normal. Design habits that work in multiple contexts, or create alternative recipes for different situations. After I sit at my desk, works at home and office. After I wake up, works anywhere. Principle 4. Start with identity-based habits. What kind of person do you want to become? Design tiny habits that align with that identity. If you want to become a writer, create habits around writing. If you want to become healthy, create habits around movement and nutrition. Each tiny habit is a vote for that identity. Here's the troubleshooting guide for design issues. If your habit feels hard, make it smaller or change the anchor to a time when ability is higher. If you forget to do it, strengthen the prompt by choosing a more obvious anchor or adding a visual cue. If it doesn't fit your schedule, find a different anchor that happens when you have time. If you lose motivation, remember motivation isn't required. Make the behavior even smaller until motivation is irrelevant. If you're not celebrating, experiment with different celebrations until you find ones that create genuine feeling. If the habit isn't growing naturally, that's fine. Keep doing the tiny version. Growth isn't required for success. Let me share a complete design example. Sarah wanted to reduce stress and increase well-being. She designed this swarm of tiny habits. After I pour coffee, I will say one thing I'm grateful for, gratitude. After I sit at my desk, I will take 2 deep breaths, calm. After I stand up from my desk, I will stretch my arms overhead, movement. After I eat lunch, I will step outside for 10 seconds, nature. After I get in bed, I will think one positive thought about today, reflection. Each habit was ridiculously small. Each was anchored to existing routine. Each had a specific celebration. Sarah implemented all 5 simultaneously. Within 2 weeks, all 5 were becoming automatic. The cumulative effect was noticeable stress reduction and improved mood. The swarm worked because each individual habit was easy, but collectively they created significant change. As we close this chapter, design your first 3 tiny habits recipes. Choose behaviors that matter to you. Make them ridiculously small. Anchor them to consistent routines. Include specific celebrations. Write them down. Starting tomorrow, execute them. And when you do, celebrate. Design is where behavior change becomes personal and powerful. Now let's learn how to troubleshoot when things don't work perfectly. Up to 6. Troubleshooting when habits don't stick. Diagnosing and fixing problems even with perfect design. Sometimes tiny habits don't stick. The behavior feels awkward, or you keep forgetting, or it doesn't become automatic as expected. This doesn't mean you failed or the method doesn't work. It means something in your design needs adjustment. This chapter teaches you how to diagnose problems and fix them systematically. The behavior model gives us a diagnostic framework. When a behavior isn't happening, one of three elements is insufficient: motivation, ability, or prompt. Let's explore how to identify which element is the problem and how to fix it. Problem 1. You keep forgetting to do the tiny habit. This is a prompt problem, not a motivation problem. If you forget, it means the prompt isn't effective. Solution: strengthen your prompt. Make your anchor more obvious. If your anchor is, after I sit at my desk, but you sometimes sit at your desk while distracted by phone calls, the prompt gets lost. Choose a more distinct anchor. Add a visual reminder at the anchor location. If your habit is, after I brush teeth, floss one tooth, put the floss right next to your toothbrush where you can't miss it. Visual prompts strengthen the reminder. Create an implementation intention. When I see specific cue, I will tiny habit. This pre-decision makes the prompt more powerful. Problem 2. The habit feels hard or you resist doing it. This is an ability problem. The behavior isn't as tiny as you thought, or it requires more effort than you have at that moment. Solution: make it smaller. If 2 push-ups feels hard, make it 1 push-up. If 1 push-up feels hard, make it putting your hands on the floor in push-up position. Also check your anchor timing. Are you trying to do the behavior when you're exhausted or rushed? Move the anchor to a time when you have more ability. If, after I get in bed, I will journal doesn't work because you're too tired, anchor journaling to an earlier moment. Problem 3. You do the behavior inconsistently. Some days yes, some days no. This suggests the behavior works sometimes but not always. Diagnose which days it works and which it doesn't. Is there a pattern? Maybe weekdays work but weekends don't. Maybe mornings work but evenings don't. Solution: create context-specific recipes. Design one recipe for weekdays and a different one for weekends. Or focus only on the context that works and accept that this habit only happens in that context. Not every habit needs to happen every day. A habit that happens 5 days a week is still valuable. Problem 4. The behavior doesn't feel natural or you don't like doing it. This is a design problem. You've chosen a behavior or anchor that doesn't fit you personally. Solution: redesign. Choose a different tiny behavior that serves the same goal but feels better to you. Or choose a different anchor that creates a more natural sequence. Remember, there's no perfect universal tiny habit. What works for someone else might not work for you. Customize. If drinking water after pouring coffee doesn't feel right, try drinking water after brushing teeth. If 2 push-ups don't appeal to you, try 2 squats. Design for your preferences. Problem 5. You're not celebrating or the celebration feels fake. This is crucial because celebration is what wires the habit. If you're not celebrating, the habit won't become automatic quickly. Solution: find celebrations that create genuine positive feeling for you. Experiment with different types. If verbal celebrations feel silly, try physical ones. If big gestures feel inauthentic, try subtle ones like just smiling. The celebration doesn't have to be elaborate. It just has to create a moment of genuine positive emotion. Keep experimenting until you find what works. Problem 6. You did the habit for a week or 2, then stopped. This is often a life disruption. Something changed your routine, which broke the anchor. Solution: re-establish the habit with the same or new anchor. Also, build in recovery protocols. When life disrupts your routine and you miss a few days, have a plan for restarting. The plan is simple. Just start again. Don't wait for Monday or next month. The next time your anchor happens, do the tiny habit. Immediately celebrate. You're back. One miss doesn't erase progress. Just restart as soon as possible. Let me share a comprehensive troubleshooting story. Tom designed a tiny habit. After I eat breakfast, I will do 1 squat. He started enthusiastically. Day 1 worked perfectly. Day 2 and 3 he forgot. Day 4, he remembered but felt resistant. Day 5, he did it but didn't celebrate. By day 6, the habit had died. Tom used the diagnostic framework. Why did he forget days 2 and 3? Prompt problem. His breakfast routine varied. Sometimes he ate at home, sometimes grabbed food on the way to work. The anchor wasn't consistent enough. Why did he feel resistant day 4? Ability problem. After breakfast, he was full and doing a squat felt uncomfortable. Why didn't he celebrate day 5? He hadn't found a celebration that felt authentic. Tom redesigned. New anchor, after I stand up from my work desk for the first time. This happened consistently every day. New tiny behavior. 1 squat. Same, but now done at a time when his stomach wasn't full. New celebration. Staying strong, which felt genuine to him. The redesigned habit worked perfectly. Within 2 weeks, it was automatic. Tom didn't fail the first time. His design needed iteration. That's normal. The ability to diagnose and fix problems is part of mastering tiny habits. Here's the advanced troubleshooting technique, the behavior design bootcamp approach. When a habit isn't working, ask 5 diagnostic questions. Question 1. Is the behavior actually tiny? Can I do this on my worst day? Question 2. Is the anchor happening consistently every day? Question 3. Is the prompt happening at a moment when I'm able to do the behavior? Question 4. Am I celebrating immediately? Question 5. Does this habit align with the person I want to become? If the answer to any question is no, that's your problem area. Fix that element. Usually, fixing one element makes the whole recipe work. Sometimes you need to redesign completely. That's fine. Tiny habits is iterative. You design, test, adjust, and refine until it works. Now let's discuss mindset around troubleshooting. When a habit doesn't stick, don't blame yourself. Don't think, I lack discipline, or I'm not good at habits. Think, my design needs adjustment. This shifts from personal failure to design challenge. The problem isn't you. The problem is the recipe. Change the recipe. This mindset is liberating. You're not broken. You're just learning what works for you specifically. Each failure is actually data about what doesn't work. Use that data to refine your approach. The person who creates 5 tiny habits and 3 stick is succeeding, not failing. They've created 3 new automatic behaviors. That's progress. As we close this chapter, if you have tiny habits that aren't sticking, diagnose them now. Which element is insufficient? Motivation, ability, or prompt? Adjust that element. Redesign the recipe. Test it again. Iteration is part of the process. The goal isn't perfect habits. It's working habits. Now let's explore how tiny habits naturally grow into bigger behaviors over time. Chapter 7. Growing tiny habits into bigger behaviors. Natural expansion. One of the most common questions about tiny habits is, how do I scale up? If I'm only flossing 1 tooth or doing 2 push-ups, when do I increase to the full behavior? The answer is both simple and profound. You don't force growth. You allow it. Tiny habits grow naturally when conditions are right. Your job is to create those conditions, not to push harder. Here's the natural growth pattern. Phase 1. You start with the tiny version. 2 push-ups. This is ridiculously easy. You do it consistently because there's no resistance. You celebrate. You feel good. The behavior is wiring in. Phase 2. After several days or weeks of consistency, the tiny behavior becomes automatic. You do it without thinking or deciding. It's just what you do after that anchor. Phase 3. Natural expansion. Once the behavior is automatic, you often find yourself naturally doing more. After 2 push-ups, you do a few more because you're already down there. After flossing 1 tooth, you floss the others because the floss is in your hand. After 2 deep breaths, you take a few more because it feels good. This expansion isn't forced. It's organic. Phase 4. The expanded behavior becomes the new normal. You're now doing 10 push-ups or flossing all your teeth. This happened gradually without willpower. The tiny habit was the seed. This expanded behavior is the tree. But you couldn't have planted the tree directly. You had to start with the seed. Let's explore why natural growth works better than forced growth. Forced growth says, start with 2 push-ups, then next week do 5, then 10, then 20 according to a schedule. This often fails because you're increasing based on arbitrary timelines, not on what your brain and body are ready for. Some weeks you're ready to increase. Other weeks you're not. A predetermined schedule ignores this reality. Natural growth responds to your actual readiness. Your brain and body tell you when they're ready for more. The signal is, you want to do more. After 2 push-ups, you feel like doing a couple more. That's your brain saying, I'm ready to grow this. Trust that signal. Do a couple more. Celebrate. The behavior grows at the pace that works for you. Here's the specific strategy for encouraging natural growth without forcing it. Strategy 1. Always give yourself permission to stop at the tiny version. This is crucial. The tiny version always counts completely. You never have to do more. This permission prevents pressure, which prevents resistance. Paradoxically, giving yourself permission to stop at tiny makes growth more likely, not less. Strategy 2. If you feel like doing more after the tiny version, do a little more and celebrate. Notice, if you feel like it. Don't force it. But if the desire is there, honor it. Do a bit more. Then celebrate the expanded behavior. This celebration wires in the larger version. Strategy 3. Let growth happen in fits and starts. Some days you'll do just the tiny version. Some days you'll naturally expand. Both are fine. Don't make expansion mandatory. It should feel optional and natural. Over time, the expanded version becomes more frequent. Eventually, it becomes the new baseline. Strategy 4. If you try to expand and it feels hard or you resist, immediately drop back to the tiny version. Don't push through resistance. That creates negative emotion which unwires the habit. If you go from 2 push-ups to 5 and 5 feels hard, go back to 2. That's still success. Maybe next week 5 will feel easy. Let me share how natural growth transformed Linda's exercise habit. She started with a tiny habit. After I get out of bed, I put on my exercise shoes. That's all. Week 1, she put on shoes then took them off. Week 2, same. Week 3, after putting on shoes, she thought, I'm already wearing shoes. Might as well walk to the mailbox. She did. Week 4, she started walking around the block some days. Week 6, walking around the block felt natural most days. Week 8, she added a second lap on days when she felt good. Week 12, she was walking 30 minutes most mornings and had added light jogging intervals. Week 20, she was running 3 miles several times per week. From putting on shoes to running 3 miles, with no forcing, no pressure, just natural growth from a tiny seed. This progression seems miraculous, but it's common with tiny habits. The tiny version removes resistance. Success creates positive emotion. The behavior wires in. Natural expansion follows. Given time and permission, tiny becomes tremendous. Now let's discuss what to do when growth doesn't happen. Sometimes you'll do the tiny version consistently for weeks or months, and it doesn't expand. You're still flossing 1 tooth or doing 2 push-ups with no natural desire to do more. This is actually fine. You have two options. Option 1. Accept the tiny version as complete success. You've created an automatic habit. You're doing the behavior every day. That's winning. Flossing one tooth every day is infinitely better than flossing 0 teeth. 2 push-ups daily is infinitely better than 0 exercise. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. The tiny version is valuable. Option 2. If you genuinely want larger results, create additional tiny habits in the same area. Instead of trying to force 2 push-ups to become 20, create a second habit. Maybe after I eat lunch, I will do 2 squats. And a third, after I brush teeth at night, I will do a plank for 5 seconds. These tiny habits compound. The total effect of multiple tiny habits can equal or exceed one large behavior. This swarm approach has advantages. If one habit struggles, the others continue. You're creating change from multiple angles. And each tiny habit is easy, preventing burnout. The person doing 3 different 2-minute exercise habits daily, 6 minutes total, often sustains better than the person trying to do one 20-minute workout. Here's the identity component of growth. As you do tiny habits consistently, your identity shifts. You become someone who flosses, someone who exercises, someone who meditates. This identity shift is powerful because once you see yourself as that kind of person, larger behaviors in that category feel natural. Of course you floss all your teeth. You're someone who flosses. Of course you work out. You're someone who exercises. This identity-based growth is different from behavior-based growth. Behavior-based. I'm trying to floss all my teeth, so I better increase gradually. Identity-based. I'm a person who cares for their teeth, so flossing thoroughly is natural for me. The second is more powerful and sustainable. Tiny habits creates identity shift through small wins. Every time you floss one tooth and celebrate, you're voting for the identity of someone who flosses. Every vote strengthens that identity. After enough votes, the identity becomes self-evident. You're no longer trying to become someone who flosses. You are someone who flosses. Then flossing all your teeth is just being yourself. Let me share the long-term trajectory. Year 1 of tiny habits. You create 3 to 10 tiny habits. Most become automatic. Some grow naturally into bigger behaviors. You're experiencing real change, but it's gradual. Year 2. Your tiny habits are deeply wired. Some have grown substantially. You've added new tiny habits. The compound effect is becoming obvious. Year 3 and beyond. You have dozens of automatic positive behaviors. Your life is noticeably different. The person who started with 2 push-ups is now fit. The person who flossed 1 tooth has perfect dental health. The person who took 2 breaths has a deep meditation practice. This transformation didn't come from discipline or willpower. It came from planting tiny seeds and nurturing them patiently. You trusted the process. You let growth happen naturally. And the cumulative effect is remarkable. As we close this chapter, if you're doing tiny habits that haven't grown yet, be patient. Give them time. Give yourself permission to stay tiny. Trust that growth will come when you're ready. And if growth doesn't come, that's fine too. Tiny habits have value exactly as they are. Now let's bring everything together in a conclusion that shows you how to implement tiny habits for life. Conclusion. Behavior design for life. Your tiny habits journey begins now. We've covered the complete tiny habit system. From understanding the Fogg behavior model and how motivation, ability, and prompt combine to create any behavior, to the revolutionary approach of starting ridiculously small to eliminate resistance, from using anchor moments to attach new habits to existing routines effortlessly, to the power of celebration and shine that wires habits through emotion faster than repetition ever could, from designing your perfect customized tiny habits that fit your actual life, to troubleshooting when things Don't work in allowing natural growth rather than forcing it. You now possess a complete framework for changing any behavior, not through willpower or motivation, but through design and emotion, not through force, but through cultivation, not through dramatic transformation, but through tiny seeds that grow into mighty trees. The question is, will you use it? Let me give you a clear 7-day implementation plan to start your tiny habits journey. Day 1. Choose one tiny habit you want to develop. Just one. Make it ridiculously small. Day 2. Identify the perfect anchor for this habit. Find an existing routine that happens consistently when you're able to do the tiny behavior. Day 3. Create your complete recipe. After I anchor, I will tiny behavior, and I will celebrate by celebration. Day 4. Execute your first tiny habit. When the anchor happens, immediately do the tiny behavior. Then celebrate. Feel the positive emotion for a few seconds. Notice how easy it was. Day 5. Do it again. Same sequence. Anchor. Behavior. Celebration. You're wiring it in. Day 6. Continue. Notice if it's starting to feel more automatic. Are you thinking about it less? Day 7. Assess. Is the habit sticking? If yes, continue and consider adding a second tiny habit. If no, use the troubleshooting framework to adjust the recipe. After 7 days, you'll have proven to yourself that tiny habits works. You'll have one behavior becoming automatic through design, not discipline. That's the foundation. From there, you can add more tiny habits, create swarms of behaviors in key life areas, and watch as your life transforms through accumulation of tiny positive changes. Now imagine where you'll be 1 year from now if you commit to tiny habits. You've created 10 to 15 automatic positive behaviors. Some started tiny and grew naturally. Others remain tiny but consistent. Together, they've created meaningful life change. Maybe you're fitter because multiple exercise habits compound. Maybe you're more productive because multiple focus habits add up. Maybe you're happier because multiple gratitude and mindfulness habits shifted your baseline mood. The remarkable part is this didn't require superhuman effort. You didn't transform through willpower. You didn't force yourself to change. You just planted tiny seeds, celebrated small wins, and let natural growth occur. The year passed anyway. But instead of another year of failed resolutions and abandoned goals, you actually changed. Permanently. 5 years from now, you've become a different person. Not through one dramatic transformation, but through hundreds of tiny changes that compounded. You've mastered the skill of behavior design. When you want to change something, you know exactly how to create a tiny habit that will stick. You've developed an identity as someone who changes, grows, and improves continuously. Tiny habits isn't something you did once. It's how you live. Here's what makes tiny habits different from every other approach you've tried. First, it works with human nature instead of fighting it. You're designed to resist big sudden changes. You're designed to conserve energy. Tiny Habits respects this and designs around it. You're not broken for failing at big ambitious goals. Big ambitious goals are poorly designed for human psychology. Second, Tiny Habits builds the skill of change itself. Each tiny habit you create successfully teaches you more about behavior design. You get better at choosing anchors, making behaviors tiny enough, celebrating effectively. These skills compound. The 10th tiny habit you create is easier than the first because you've developed expertise. Third, Tiny Habits creates positive emotion around change. Most people associate behavior change with pain, deprivation, and willpower. Tiny Habits create celebration, success, and joy. This emotional shift is profound. Instead of dreading change, you start enjoying it. Instead of associating habits with obligation, you associate them with accomplishment. Fourth, Tiny Habits is infinitely flexible and personal. There's no rigid program. You design habits that fit your life, your goals, your preferences. What works for you won't work for someone else. That's perfect. Tiny Habits gives you the framework. You customize the content. Let me address the final doubt you might have. Is this really enough? Will tiny habits actually create the transformation I want? The answer is yes, but you must trust the process. Your brain wants to jump ahead. It wants to see dramatic results immediately. Resist that urge. Stay with the tiny version. Celebrate the small wins. Trust that compound growth over time creates results that dramatic efforts never could. Think about nature. Giant sequoia trees grow from seeds smaller than a grain of rice. Those trees reach heights of 300 feet and live thousands of years. But they start impossibly small. They grow slowly, patiently, naturally. You can't force a sequoia to grow faster. You can only plant the seed, provide good conditions, and let nature work. Your habits are the same. The tiny behavior is the seed. Celebration and consistency are the good conditions. Natural growth is nature working. Trust the process. A year from now, you'll have mighty trees growing from seeds you plant today. Here's the fundamental mindset shift tiny habits requires. Let go of the belief that big goals require big actions. Embrace the truth that tiny actions, repeated consistently with positive emotion, create transformation that big actions never could. Flossing one tooth is not a compromise or a stepping stone. It's the smartest way to create a flossing habit. 2 push-ups is not giving up on fitness. It's the most effective way to become someone who exercises. The world will question your tiny habits. People will say, "That's too small to matter. You're not trying hard enough. You need to aim higher." Let them. You know something they don't. You understand behavior science. You know that motivation is unreliable, ability is controllable, and celebration wires habits. You know that tiny seeds grow into mighty trees. You're not playing their game of willpower and discipline. You're playing a different game: design and cultivation. I want to leave you with one final truth. You are capable of extraordinary change. Not because you have extraordinary willpower or discipline, but because you can learn to work with your brain instead of fighting it. You can design behaviors that succeed. You can create positive emotions that wire habits. You can cultivate transformation the way a gardener grows a garden. Stop trying to change through force. Stop relying on motivation that fluctuates daily. Stop setting big goals that require superhuman consistency. Start designing tiny habits. Start celebrating small wins. Start trusting natural growth. Start today. Choose one tiny habit right now. What's one behavior you could do that's so small you could do it even on your worst day? Got it. Good. Now, what existing routine could serve as the anchor? When does that routine happen? What celebration would create genuine positive feeling for you? Write down your first tiny habit recipe. After I anchor, I will tiny behavior, and I will celebrate by celebration. Tomorrow, when that anchor happens, do the tiny behavior. Then celebrate. Feel genuinely good about it for a few seconds. That's it. You've started. Do this for 1 week. Just one tiny habit, 1 week. Consistent execution with celebration. After 1 week, you'll know this works. You'll feel the behavior becoming automatic. You'll have proven to yourself that change is possible through design, not discipline. Then add another tiny habit. And another. Build your swarm. Watch your life transform. Tiny habits isn't a program you complete. It's a skill you develop and a system you live. It's how you create change for the rest of your life. No more failed resolutions. No more guilt about abandoned goals. No more feeling like you lack discipline. Just smart design, small wins, and patient growth. Your transformation begins with 1 tooth, 1 push-up, 1 breath, 1 sentence. One tiny habit. Plant that seed today. Celebrate when you do. Trust the process. The mighty tree is already growing. Welcome to Tiny Habits. Welcome to behavior design. Welcome to change that actually lasts. Start ridiculously small. Celebrate every win. Let it grow naturally. This is how transformation actually happens.